guess we'll officially start now. And this clock is just a little bit behind. Good morning. This is Unity of Springfield for those who are on the World Wide Web. I believe it's the 15th today, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're midway through December, which is amazing to me. And it also means we have almost exactly 1 week before winter solstice, I think. Mm-hmm. So shortest day of the year, and then we're on the gradual climb up out of that darkness again. So I'm really glad about that. Today we're going to be talking about the phrase that Joseph Campbell came up with in the last 15 years of his life. It's an expression called "follow your bliss," and this was something that really took off, especially toward the end of his life and in years to follow. I think we've all probably heard the term "follow your bliss," and he's the one who originated. He's the one who came up with it. And hey, Jared, pick up a piece of paper there.
Okay. I can't read anyway. I can't see.
Oh, you can't see.
No,
okay.
I'm good.
Oh, got it.
Broke.
I have had that.
I've got little guys flying around in my eye now.
Okay. Well, try and land them for class.
Wow.
Okay. Well, so anyway, in The Power of Myth, which was, I think, the last book that came out on Joseph Campbell before he died, because I think he died the following year after its release, or after, actually, I think the book came out maybe after his death. And he had the PBS special on from his interviews with Bill Moyers. How many people saw that, by the way? Okay, good. Yeah. It's if you get a chance, go online. I think you can probably watch it maybe on YouTube, but every once in a while PBS will put it on too. And, so it's.
When he has a copy of it.
Oh, okay. You have the physical copy of it. Yeah. Anyway, within months of airing that interview, the term "follow your bliss" just kind of took off, and it's a catchphrase now, and we use it. And the reason I wanted to do this, well, first of all, I was doing The Power of Myth the last times that I talked, but also because Karen was talking very, very similarly about this last Sunday, about how to do the things you love doing in the business, whatever you're doing in life. And this kind of follows that same flow. So the one thing that was kind of interesting to me, though, was this catchphrase, "follow your bliss." Hey, Elby, go ahead and take a piece of paper there.
Okay.
You can have one. I can't see it.
Oh, there's one.
There's plenty of them.
This is yours.
Jerry, you're going to have a handwriting assignment, though, so I don't know. You might need to keep one.
I failed that one.
Oh, you failed it already before starting. The catchphrase "follow your bliss" does not show up in.
But I don't.
It doesn't show up in any of the books that he wrote.
Did you hear me?
What that?
Do we have any more pens?
I've got lots of pins right here.
Right there. Good. Because I thought I had it in my purse, but it's not there.
All right. So I think on your paper it starts out with the terminology of bliss, and I'm going to go ahead and read. And I'm going to have some of you do the reading instead of me at times, anyway. So Pat, I'll pass those out when we're ready for it.
When we're ready?
Yeah, it's toward the end of the class. We'll be.
Not now? Not now.
All right, fine. That's not it.
Where's the pen? If I need a pen? Oh, they don't. Anybody else? No, they don't.
So throughout his life, Joseph Campbell spoke about following his zeal, okay, following his enthusiasms, his interests, his passion, but over time his study of mythology supplied the wording we're familiar with today. And of course, if we look at, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, one of the one powers that Charles speaks about is still, yeah, same thing, okay, following your bliss, following your seal, okay, so it's this is how I kind of tie it into unity here, is because this is one of the powers that the Fillmores came up with. And when you look at what the Fillmores did, I mean, if anybody could have been following their bliss, I would have to say it was them. Because look, I mean, they did not go down the traditional route of, going out there and getting a 9-to-5 job, or at the time, it was probably more of a farming type of, I think 60% of Americans were farmers at that time in history.
They were farmers?
What's
They
that?
had a farm?
They did. You're right about that. But, I mean, if you look at everything that they accomplished, which is this incredible campus that we call Unity Village, if you look at all of the, they had the largest vegetarian restaurant, I believe, in the world, and it was in Kansas City. They had radio programs, which, that was pre-television, of course, and they just did so much. And at the same time, what were they doing? They were following the bliss. They were following the seal.
Seems to be contagious.
It's contagious. It really is, isn't it? Yeah, it's kind of exciting talking about it. Anybody want to read that first quote of Charles where he says, "Now I came to this idea," not Charles, Joseph Campbell. Go ahead. Let's get the microphone on you so the people online can hear you.
I needed something to do.
You'll have to turn it on too, probably.
Probably something.
Great. Thanks, Elby.
Now I came to this idea of bliss because in Sanskrit, which is great spiritual language of the world, there are 3 terms that represent the brink, the jumping off place to the ocean of transcendence, Sat, Chi, Ananda. The word Sat means being. Chet means consciousness. Amandan means bliss or rapture, I thought. I don't know whether my consciousness is proper consciousness or not. I don't know whether what I know of my being is my proper being or not. But I do know where my rapture is. So let me hang on to rapture, and that will bring me both my consciousness and my being.
Any thoughts on that? I took a lot from that paragraph.
What do you think he was meaning when he said rapture?
To me, I look at rapture as being the same thing as seal, or same thing as bliss. It's kind of interesting. When I was young, kind of after a bike, I had a Baptist upbringing with my parents, and after I left that, I kind of rejected that very Baptist upbringing, but I kept the spiritual part of it. And so I always carried this spiritual foundation, but I got into a yoga group, and it was called Ananda Marga. So Marga means the path, and Ananda means bliss, so it was the path of bliss. And I look at rapture as being the same thing. Does anybody else have any different thoughts on that? Maybe? Go ahead, Wendy.
Well, in the Abraham teachings, basically what they say is that your emotions are your guidance system, and so your higher being's there, and it's always directing you and go to your highest good. And through your emotions, the more closer you are to the rapture feeling, that joyous feeling, the closer you are to vibrationally matching them, and thus bringing your good to you.
Yeah, thank you. I kind of like this because We don't, I mean, if you think, okay, where's your consciousness at? I don't know where my consciousness is at, but I know what I get excited about. And we all know what we get excited about. And if we can get to that point, then we kind of know where our consciousness is. Go ahead, Ellen.
I've been reading a lot of Ken Wilber lately, and he actually has a program that takes you, because he's been studying Buddhism for years, but he studied everything, everywhere.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, they're all transcendent parallel paths. And he has a program that takes you, and he says scientifically, if you follow this like an experiment and you follow this trail that I'm giving you, you will ascend to a place where you feel that bliss, you feel total emptiness, and then you feel total transcendent love with everything. And he said, you know, he studied the mystics, and he said they all point to the same experience, and it's an infinite experience. So there's no words to describe it, but all of the different mystery schools all point to that experience. And rapture has taken on a whole different meaning with the Christian church. They're expecting to be raptured out.
Absolutely, and you're right.
But if you take this meaning that he's talking about, you get pulled into that bliss, into that space of emptiness and that space of love. And so it is a pulling that you get drawn in. So in that sense, it would be rapture.
That's a good analogy. I like that. I never thought about that before. I like that, how you put that. Yeah, thanks for sharing. All right, continuing on, and this is on your paper too, follow your bliss. If you do follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track, just like you're kind of saying, you know, that has been there all the while waiting for you, and the life you ought to be living is the one you are living. When you can see that, you begin to meet people who are in the field of your bliss, and they open the doors to you. I say, follow your bliss and don't be afraid. The doors will open, and where you didn't know they were going to be, if you follow your bliss, doors will open for you that wouldn't have opened for anyone else. And I'm kind of going to give you a little bit of an illustration just in my own life on what happened to me when I decided to do what it was that, you know, I felt like I was following that extremely high interest that I had. And I had gone to college and became a teacher, and a little bit later on became an administrator. And after 7 years, I actually got a position to be a superintendent of schools at one small school district. And I went to a meeting of all state superintendents, and I walked in the door, and I immediately, it was this greatest repulsion. I mean, it was horrible, and I knew, I'm out of here. I am not going to do this. It was just the biggest turnoff to me, and I knew that I was out of the field. You know, education was not going to be my thing. And, you know, administration especially, I loved working with the kids. That was great. But it was all the other things that were just repulsive to me.
Did you stay for the meeting?
No, I didn't. I left. Brenda, take a paper right there. Thank you. So anyway, and immediately right after I made that decision, because I turned in my resignation. I had no idea what I was going to be doing. And just, I'm not going to go into detail, but I'm going to let you know, I had $200 to my name. That was it.
Was that when you had a family?
I had a family, and yes, and it was like, immediately when that happened, I was sitting down with a couple, friend of mine, a husband and wife, in West Plains, Missouri, and at dinner time they're saying, yeah, Mark told me his brother was doing this really neat business out in Georgia, and it was a business about buying and selling textbooks. And I had this passion for books. I've always loved books. And immediately my interest perked up and was like, wow, I want to know about this, And so he was telling me all about it and called Mark up, and Mark agreed to meet me in Clarksville, Tennessee at Austin Peay University. And he trained me how to do this business that he was doing. Well, I ended up in that business for 25 years. And the first year, I told myself, okay, if I'm going to do this, because I've got to be practical too. I've got a family. I've got to make some money. I've got to make at least as much as I was going to make in education that first year. Well, that first year I made exactly the same amount of money that I would have made, So it was like, okay, that was confirmation. I am following what I really love, because after 25 years, I was in heaven. I loved doing what I was doing. And about the second year, that it doubled my salary increase. I made twice as much. Third year, it took off. I mean, it was like boom. And but it was so cool. That was like, I felt like I took the risk, and I'm so glad I took the risk, because modern society would tell you not to do that, right? Modern society would tell you, this is what you're doing, this is your career, you can go through, you can retire after 30 years of teaching or whatever it is.
You better find some new friends.
What's that?
You better find some new friends.
Yeah.
Centurions will tell you that you should take the risk.
Yeah. It
When
was,
you talk to centurions, that have made it to 100 years, they will tell you, I wish I would have taken more risks.
yeah, exactly. And, it was so cool too, because I always told myself I'm going to retire at 65. And when it was getting closer to that, when I was getting closer to that age, I'm 70 now, so that was 5 years ago. I just thought, I just love doing this, but maybe I'll just slow down and do a little bit of it, not go out as often. And, that was back when I, after I met Sue, and we, became a couple, and then later got married. But when I turned 65, two big things happened. And that was the publishers of these college textbooks turned the books into digital books, which meant I could no longer do what I had that passion of doing. But they've still put out some books, so I thought, I'll go out and get those some books that are out there. Maybe there were about a third of the books that there used to be. But it was still work to me to go out occasionally and see all the people I loved and got to know and everything. And then COVID hit. And everything shut down. And all of a sudden, the students are staying at home and getting all of their lessons online. All classes were online. And the teachers didn't even come into their offices. So my business was over then. And it was like, I had told myself 65. I thought I was going to change that. But by golly, no, there was a higher power there that said, no, you got other things to do.
It would have been nice if you'd figured that out before you had to create Coleman.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, Wendy. Did you have to share it?
Okay, so, on your paper, it says, follow your bliss is a metaphor for finding what brings you the most fulfillment in life. And if you read Joseph Campbell, he uses the word metaphor a lot. And so anyway, if we look at the term follow your bliss and getting your fulfillment in life, that's a metaphor, okay? Now hang on to this, because at the end of into the talk here. We're going to do a little homework assignment, and this is kind of what that's about. Let's see. Miss can't tell you what your bliss is, but they can show you the obstacles you might face. And we talked about Miss, if you were here when I was doing I did 2 classes on this book, The Power of Myth, and I think it was the first 3 chapters that I'm doing. There is a chapter also on following your bliss. I'm taking it from, because he has no writings on follow your bliss. So this, I took it from this chapter in this book, and also, from when he worked with his students, he talked about following your bliss. So I was able to pull up some stuff online about that too. Creativity, this is a big one. If we're following our bliss, we really tap into our creativity. Okay? Society may not support the creative life, but creatives can claim their identity and commit to living their bliss. And I know all of us here that I see here, we do have that passion for creativity. I think I see that in all of you. How many of us feel like we're tapping into that as much as we want to?
Starting.
What's that?
Starting.
Okay, starting too. Okay. Don, I would say I know. When I listen to you and your poetry, I would say you are there.
Well, I don't have enough poetry.
Okay. Is it ever enough?
Okay, yeah, going to Winnie. Give me more ideas. Yeah.
Wendy.
So I create a lot of artistic things,
You do.
but someone who you don't realize, one of my greatest works of art is being a wife and making a beautiful, comfortable, loving home. So that is great.
Absolutely.
You don't have to do art.
Yeah. Creativity, absolutely, can be anything. I mean, you could be a car wash worker and have that passion for that, and have a creativity in it. And you can tell when you meet somebody that is in their creative mode, they're in their bliss. You can see it, and you can feel it, and they're usually tapping into your energy too and pulling it out of you sometimes. Yeah. So that creativity is always there, or can be always there.
Well, most of my career, I was a truck and farm machinery mechanic. But whenever I was in high school, I took a residential electric and plumbing class. Our high school at that time, every year they'd go out and buy a piece of a lot, and we would build a house to sell, and I enrolled in that apprenticeship type setting to work on the house. So I did that, and that was beneficial because after I come out as transgender, and I trouble finding jobs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I bought this travel trailer fifth wheel that I'm living in. And them skills that I didn't think I would ever use helped me with the knowledge to rebuild this fifth wheel that I'm living in. And we never know, a person never knows the education that you pick up, and it lays dormant for 20, 30 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you get to thinking, I took all that training and it's 20 years later and I haven't even used it. And then the opportunity comes along and you get the chance to put it to use. And it's highly beneficial that we learn that we can tap into our upper consciousness and go back to like a computer, go back and dig into the hard drive and get the information we need.
Absolutely. And if anybody is following that path of creativity and knowledge and bliss, that is Brenda, because she is one heck of a good, anything, go ahead, pick up a paper here, John.
Well, we'll do so.
Thanks.
Hi.
If you want to know mechanics, listen to Brenda, because she knows what she's talking about, and she has that passion for it, and it shows, and she's dang good at it. Go ahead, Pat.
Hello, how are you all? I just wanted to let you know I was a teacher for a really long time, and I enjoyed that because I knew I was helping the kids, and they were enjoying that too. And I taught 1 year at Drury College, 1 year at Stratford High School, and a whole lot of kids in the 8th grade in Marshville. And it's so exciting to me when I see one of my students and they come running up to me and give me a big hug and say, "Oh, we really enjoyed you, Miss Childers." I'm going, "Well, thank you."
It's a great feeling.
It just happened the other day too.
Sean, pick up a piece of paper.
Did you hear me?
Yeah.
It just happened to me the other day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. One of my kids came running up to me and did that.
Really?
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, Pat.
Wow. I love it.
Okay, we're on authenticity. A creative approach can lead to a more authentic and rewarding experience. Following your bliss is a metaphor for a process that begins with a journey, a quest to uncover what you find most fulfilling in your life. The quest for the Holy Grail, that which gives life meaning and purpose. My bliss is not your bliss. I have to discover my bliss on my own by listening to myself, following clues dropped by the greater part of my being. And I think it's really so important to realize this. We have to go inside in order to find that. And that's where I'm saying, talking about the Holy Grail. That Holy Grail is inside of us. And that search for it is when we go within and we tap into that which Charles said was zeal, or what the term that we use here, rapture, or bliss. Right? Okay. Go ahead, Don.
Yep. Oh, no, drop it. That's okay. The thing is, we never really know where it's going to come from. When I was introduced to the poetry, I thought I was coming unhinged. I really did. I went to a psychologist.
Yeah.
And they had to reassure me that this was a wake-up call.
Yeah.
I've been in a laboratory all my life, and it's the other end of the stick.
Yeah.
And so it was, you never know when it's going to hit you or how.
Absolutely. Good point. Good point. And that kind of happened to me too with what I was doing. Anyway, there's a lot in that. Thank you for saying that. You enter the forest at the darkest point where there is no path. That's kind of what you're saying. You went to get help. Where there's a way or path, it is someone else's path. Each human being is a unique phenomenon. The idea is to find your own pathway to bliss. We're all unique. We're all different, every one of us. I mean, it's like a fingerprint. There's no other that is exactly alike. We can meet with friends that have 99% of our interests, but they're not that extra 1%. They're not just like us. Have you ever met anybody that was just like you? There isn't. John.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw him say that on a Facebook piece.
What Facebook piece is that?
It's just reels. It's excerpts from the discussion
Oh,
from
okay.
this conversation that this is based on.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's almost like you're saying you need a machete.
yeah, yeah.
And
Good. It cut through. Elby.
In the terms of Brene Brown from the book that we've been studying in the home group, you're going into the wilderness. And yeah, it takes a machete in the wilderness sometimes. And it is so your own path. And you have to, she quotes Maya Angelou, you know, you're in the wilderness, you belong nowhere and everywhere. And the most important person for you is yourself. Because if you don't take a account of yourself, you have nothing to give. And so this fits right in with what we've been studying about going into the wilderness and going in with no path.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Well, once Bliss takes commitment, perseverance. It's not the easiest of paths, according to Joseph Campbell stressed. That's been my advice to young people who ask me, what shall I do? I taught once in a boys' prep school. That's the moment for young boys, or it used to be, I don't know what's going on now, when they had to decide their life courses, you know, where they are going. You know where they're going, and they're caught with excitement. This one wants to study art, this one poetry, this one anthropology, but Dad says study law. That's where the money is. Okay, that's the decision. And you know what my answer would be? Where your enthusiasm is. So I have a little word, follow your bliss. The bliss is the message of God to yourself. That's where your life is. And that's kind of a neat connection there. How many of us kind of feel like we're carrying around God in our pocket? Have you ever felt that way?
In the mirror.
In the mirror? Okay. It's kind of an interesting thing. Go ahead, Wendy.
Just to go back when you said following your bliss isn't always easy, I would think just the opposite of that. You know, Jesus said, "My yoke is easy." Following your bliss is easy. What's not easy is the process of letting go of all of the beliefs that you have that stand in the way.
Very good point. Very good point. And I think that's what he's trying to say too, is once you get to that point of knowing, everything becomes easier. But it's having to fight. I hate using the word society, but it's like all those things that we put in our head that we feel like we have to do. Because everybody says this is the way, or this is what you hear on TV, or this is, you know. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, this is what we learned at home.
Yeah.
This is what my mom and dad told me. This is what they screamed at each other about while I was in the womb.
Yeah.
Okay? It's just, it's very hard to, and all of us have done it, to start out having all of this that you have to swim through to finally arrive at a place where, oh, there I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Linda.
Well, you've mentioned that we carry God around in our pocket. Well, nowadays, you used to think you'd have to have a whole wall like that full of books to find anything out.
Yeah.
But nowadays, with a smartphone, you carry it around with you.
Yeah.
You got all that information right in your little handheld device.
Yeah.
All you have to do is go to Google search and ask Google, and it will tell you what you need to know.
You're kind of carrying the world in your hand, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. But it's really true. I remember those days of, anybody ever have Encyclopedia Britannica in their house?
No.
Or any kind of encyclopedia.
My dad filled World Book.
Oh, okay, World Books. anyway, a set of encyclopedias. And how many times when I was a kid, I'd be, paging through a book here, or looking something up. And now it's like, wow, it's amazing. Soon I'll be at home and we'll be talking about something. And it's like, I wonder, blankety blank blank. I wonder about this, how old is so-and-so? Whatever question you have, the answer is within just seconds now. And it's just amazing to me how that information anyway is out there. So
Yeah, you could spend
days.
2 or 3 hours or days.
Yeah.
Trying to find
Yeah.
information out.
Yeah.
And now it's instantaneous.
Yeah.
That's not coming over the.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Google it.
I tried to, it's not fast.
Jerry, you're gonna have to be quick on your feet.
I'm just, quick like
I'm gonna skip a little bit because I want to. Let's go down to following bliss later in life. Okay, if you see that on the paper, following bliss later in life is in capital letters. Though Campbell considered this advice especially appropriate for young people just setting out in life, because Campbell was a teacher, right, at Sarah Lawrence College, I believe it was. And so he's talking with young people, and he's trying to teach them how to follow what is their passion, okay? Before taking on family responsibilities and financial commitments, he believed this maxim relevant as well for those at midlife and beyond, with an important caveat. And I think what he's trying to say and what I'm trying to point out here is that we're never too old. We are never too old to follow our bliss, to do the things that excite us, that give us that bliss, that zeal, that, and this is everything that I think Charles and Myrtle were trying to teach us also. Is, and for me, from, like my example, I was telling you that when I hit 65, my business was over. I had been following that bliss for years, and I loved it. And it was so interesting because, just like you were saying, Wendy, how, sometimes I felt like I was carrying God in my pocket. It was just like, I just felt like I was in such a stream with a higher power. And, I always felt like I was always told where to go, and what to say, and how to connect with people, and when to quit for the day. It was so exciting. Every day was a fresh new adventure. And anyway, so I carried that around with me for 25 years, and all of a sudden, bam, 65, the product I'm a textbook broker, and the product turns digital. So the textbooks are gone. And then COVID hits, and so my customers are gone. And so at 65, like I said, I always knew 65 I was going to end it, and yet I didn't want to do that when I got there. But the universe is saying, no, you're done. It's over. And so now, here I am, at 65, I'm kind of, okay, I'm retired, and, now what? And so I'm kind of, playing around with, these different things that are, passion for me, but it is very different than what I was just in that flow for such a long time. Go ahead, Don. You would be a perfect one to speak on this topic.
I was just gonna say, when this poetry thing hit me, I was 69.
Okay.
And I have about almost 1,100 poems now.
Yeah, that is so remarkable.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
and it's still going.
yeah.
Wendy keeps feeding me new material.
Great, thank you.
I just want to say on him though, when you reach those places, his second wife had passed, two wonderful marriages, lovely wives, and she passed, and he literally prayed and asked for the next thing to open up.
Yeah.
So that he was ready for more, he said.
Yeah.
I saw this with my dad. My dad had borrowed money, and it took him until he was 65 to pay the loan because it was with his brother, so he couldn't declare bankruptcy. But he became a World Book Encyclopedia salesman, and I would go somewhere with him, and he would say, "There's these children at this house, and I sold a set there," and he would do everything he could to get these books into people's homes. And he knew everybody in his district everywhere. And he ended up having to transfer to Pennsylvania, where he met his second wife, who wouldn't marry him because his first wife was still alive. And so he brought her to meet my mother. And my mother said, "I think you should marry him. He deserves at least one good marriage in his lifetime." And so she married him. And she had been a travel agency, and so he became, and she still was a travel agent. And he ended up going on tours with her and had the most amazing, marvelous experiences. They went on like 38 cruises. And so his life totally changed, something he never would have expected. But it was so neat watching him with this woman that didn't particularly care for me and my lifestyle, because I was pretty wild, but it was amazing to watch the transition that my father went through and how much bliss he had at the end of his life. And he lived to be 95. Wow. And he drove to the drugstore the day he died on an errand for his wife.
Wow, that's amazing.
And just followed.
Yeah.
And he was a student of Zig Ziglar.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting. We all know who Myrtle Fillmore is. Actually, I would say she was the first one who really came up with Unity. But it's kind of, I always felt like she was doing exactly what she loved. She was what a teacher she was. And she never stopped that. What she did from the beginning until the end never changed because she was following this. And it was what I thought. One story about her that I thought was so interesting was she knew when she was going to die, right? And so the last day of her life, she's going around and saying goodbye to everybody, And it's like, hey, I'm checking out tomorrow, and I just wanted to say goodbye to you. And she's doing that to everybody at Unity Village is where they're at. And the next day, whatever time it was, she passed, And it was like, to me, it was like she never stopped following her bliss until the moment of transcending, That was so cool. What a cool story that is. How many people can you say that about? Most people are fighting that, that transcendence, or just struggling with that issue. That wasn't a struggle for her at all. Jeremy.
It's always resistance that causes the most pain.
Yeah.
Whenever you flow and you go, you're okay.
Thank you. I'm going to skip a little bit here. We're going down to bliss and rapture. Campbell sometimes describes bliss as rapture. We talked about this earlier, which is likely to be very different from one's will. You might consciously will to become a lawyer, computer programmer, or news anchor. But if your bliss, your passion, your calling is music or preaching or teaching or building or writing, then by all means, follow the call. This is the path out of wasteland. And I thought that was an interesting thing when you said out of wasteland. I don't want to think anybody's life is a waste, but if we're doing something that we're just doing it because we felt like our father and mother wanted us to do that, or that's family tradition, or it's just what I picked out of a book or whatever, then maybe we're not digging deep enough, and maybe we're not actually finding that bliss or using the potential that we actually have. Have we, have any of us, have all of us spent parts of our life, fighting that, and as you say, resisting it?
Well, it brings up really interesting thoughts because pain and suffering sometimes put us in a position where we find our bliss, and sometimes we spend more time there than is maybe necessary. But I mean, it's just so individual. I mean, every path's so different. It's really hard, to make a judgment about wasteland or not.
Well, I think, where Joseph Campbell is coming from is, again, he's teaching students that are young. Okay, so we're talking about people that are 18 to 22, basically, because he was teaching undergraduates, I think, mostly. And so he's trying to get them to tap into that, go where your passion is. And, and of course, none of us are in the 18 to 22 range here in the classroom anyway. Oh, D is. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, that was sweet.
There's always an exception.
That was fun. When I was going to license teacher school at Unity Village, and I had finished and had my license, I thought I was supposed to go into ministerial school. I applied 3 years in a row. I didn't get an interview the first 2 years. The third year I got an interview, and I still was passed over. And I truly believe that God knew I would not be the best minister, but my administrative side, I mean, I never get up in the morning at 80 years old and go, oh, I wish I didn't have to go to work today. I don't.
Because you love what you do.
I love what I do.
That's a great story, too. If we can do what we love, if we get up in the morning and go, yes, then you know you're there. Our bliss is the what, where, and when we feel most authentic, most ourselves. It is what we are doing when time drops away and we reside in an eternal now. Eternal means more than forever. From the Latin e, or outside, and ternum, or time, that which is eternal exists outside time. It transcends time. And that's what's so cool about this, because if you're doing those things that you love, that passion that you have, time stops. Time doesn't exist anymore. Okay? When you're in your bliss, ego concerns dissolve. You aren't thinking about that misunderstanding with your sister, or what you should do for dinner, how you're going to pay the light bill next Tuesday, or what's on television tonight. When you're in your bliss, whether that bliss is sculpting clay or crunching numbers, time ceases to exist. Okay, so from the power of man. Okay, this is coming from the chapter on the follow your bliss. Moyers, what happens when you follow your bliss? Campbell, you come to bliss. In the Middle Ages, a favorite image that occurs in many, many contexts is the wheel of fortune. There is the hub of the wheel, and there is the revolving rim of the wheel. For example, if you are attached to the rim of the wheel of fortune, you will be either above, going down, or at the bottom, coming up. But if you are at the hub, you're in the same place all the time. That is the sense of the marriage vow. I take you in health or sickness, in wealth or poverty, going up or going down. But I take you as my center, and you are my bliss. And he's talking about marriage here. Not the wealth that you might bring me, nor the social prestige, but you, that is following your bliss. This comes out of the story he's talking about, marriage. Okay, and but it's the whole thing with the Wheel of Fortune is, if we're living on that edge, we're constantly going up and down and up and down. But if you're in the center, or what John, you would refer to as the middle path, the Buddhist path, then you're always right there, and you're not going, you're not having those ups and downs. Okay? Moyers, when did you know yours? Campbell, when I was a kid, I never let anybody pull me off course. My family helped me all the time just to do the thing I really deeply most wanted to do. I didn't even realize there was a problem. Now, many of us had parents that they really did help us out. They did help us to find that spot that was our true self. And a lot of parents, I think, didn't quite know how to do that. And, I think there's a lot of both in, the way I was raised. The one thing that I love that my parents did for me was they actually took out an insurance policy that allowed me to go to college. Because we weren't a wealthy family by any means. We didn't have money. But I got a grand total of $1,500 by the time I, turned 18 and, was ready for school. Now, by that time, $1,500 didn't go very far, of course, and it goes almost nowhere now. But it was a start, and it got me in the path where I could start college. I got scholarships, I got grants, and I worked and put myself through school with all of that help, and it really did start me doing the things I wanted to do. So family can be an asset. It can also be a detriment, in helping to find our path there.
Or it could be, couldn't care less what you do.
That's true.
Yeah.
I almost think that's a detriment. I don't know, I think
Well,
it's
from experience, I know that.
yeah, that's true. I'm going to skip the next thing. He's talking about working at Sarah Lawrence and go to Moyers. And one doesn't have to be a poet to do this. Campbell said, poets, or simply those who have made profession and a lifestyle of being in touch with their bliss. And boy, did I think about you, Don, and Karen both, when I read that. It's like, when you're tapping into your creativity in the way that you do, Don, it is, it's addictive. It's addictive to see that, and I love that. And thank you for that. Campbell, there was a wonderful old man up in Woodstock, New York, who had a piece of property with these little chicken coop places he would rent out for $20 a year or so to any young person he thought might have a future in the arts. There was no running water, only here and there a well and a pump. He declared he wouldn't install running water because he didn't like the class of people it attracted. That is where I did most of my basic reading work. It was great. I was following my Bliss. And that brings me to a story of when I was in school. I went to school at the University of Iowa, and there was a kind of a community. It was a very eclectic place of these old, really old, beautiful brick buildings. And this guy with the last name of Black, he turned all these into apartments. Very eclectic apartments. We're talking very, very different. And I lived there for a little while, and it was mostly artists and writers that lived in these apartments. It was called Black's Gaslight Village. I lived in the same apartment that Kurt Vonnegut had lived in just before. And if any of you know, Kurt Vonnegut was a famous writer here and worked at the University of Iowa's Writers' Workshop. And so I was able to really, I think, tap into the energies of a lot of the people that lived there. But also at the same time, there was this exact same thing that he's talking about. There was a farmer who had a bunch of old chicken coops that he didn't use anymore, and he literally rented them out to people to live in for almost nothing. And the state shut him down because they found out that he's renting chicken coops out. But I thought it was so great. There were professors that lived in these chicken coops. And I think they were following their bliss. Lawyers, bliss is now. Campbell, in heaven, you will be having such a marvelous time looking at God that you won't get your own experience at all. That is not the place to have the experience. Here is the place to have it. I thought that was kind of a neat thought that, gee, who knows what's going to happen when we die, go to heaven, or whatever you might call it. That we're going to be so enraptured, that we're going to be so in love with just watching God that we don't even have that experience. And he is saying, here is that place. We are living that life right now. And we can have that heaven with us. We can tap into that energy right now. So, you know what? It's 10 after. On the back side of your sheet there, there's a homework assignment for you. You've just been given permission and a ruling from God to do, act, feel, and travel as you wish. What are your top 2 blissful desires? How can you get there? What stands in the way? What might be a balance? The razor's edge or heart and mind in making progress. I just wanted you to take just 1 minute and take a pen and just write one word or a sentence or whatever that you feel like, hey, this is what I feel like I want to tap into. Make sure to put something down. And this is just for you. You don't have to, we're not going to be sharing this a lot of time. Although if we did have time, it might be neat to take some stories. And I'm going to do it too because what I kind of want to get across here is, and I'm speaking to myself more than anything else, is that I want to take the time on a regular basis to really have self-introspection, to really look at, okay, am I doing those things that bring me happiness? Am I doing those things that are fulfilling to me? Am I looking at that close enough? Or am I just going about doing the day-to-day things that I feel like I need to do? We have to do too. It's a balance, right? It's a balance between heart and mind.
The energy of the room changed when we did this.
Yeah, it did.
You go into a different reality,
Yeah.
but you're thinking in different terms.
I'm going to share one thing that I did this week. I had a little bit of a health scare. Ended up going to the emergency room last weekend. I'm not going to go into detail, but everything turned out great. And so that was a, you know that feeling when you think, oh my gosh, something's going wrong with me, and then you find out you're okay. You feel so good. But I was, picked up one of the, card set that I had had for years. I've never opened it before. And it's called the Mind Body Makeover Cards. It's written by a woman named Mona Lisa Schultz, so she has a picture of Mona Lisa on the card box. But and she's a medical doctor and also a psychologist too. And what I want to do, well, anyway, going back last week and just before I went into the ER, I picked up this card and I just spread the cards out, down where it shows Mona Lisa, and picked one out and I read it and it knocked me over. I mean, it literally, I was bowled over. It was like so there, and it helped me so much. And I wanted to share this with you, and that's where it says your personal affirmation. I'm going to put these cards out. I want everybody to just come up, pull a card, and just write that affirmation down. I'm just curious if it hits you like it hit me. So anyway, out of your seats. Find a card, and then write that one. See if it has any attunement to what might be going, what you might be going through. And I'm going to turn off the computer because I think it's 10:15.
Oh,
I didn't see it.
Oh.
I don't think
Well-
they're here. We'll they'll do the announcements.
Tune into church for the announcement.
Tune into church for the announcements. And thank you for being with us.